Hello, everyone. Gino Barbaro here, host of the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast, and my co-host today, filling in for Mr. Yaki Boom Boom Stenziano, is my other brosif, Joshua Rusin. Joshua, how you doing?
Gino, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, Mr. Rusin. Listen, what do we got going on in October?
Our live event. So the listeners, if you don't know, this is somewhere you want to be. Gino, tell them why they should come out to Nashville this October and see us.
Well, one of the reasons is we've got a great guest on today. We're going to introduce him in a minute, but he's going to be at the live event. We had the live event last year talking about buy right, manage right, and finance right. So if you want to learn more, all multifamily. I've heard it's a family event. You're going to be meeting my 6 kids there. We're going to be selling some water bottles. They've got a little game going on to see who can sell the most. Whoever can sell the most, I got to give them $50, guys. So keep it coming, right? So please book your event and go online. Take a look at jakeandgino.com/mastery. And as Jake would say, that's enough shameless plugging, right, Josh?
Yeah, and Mastery 2018 is the link. jakeandgino.com /mastery 2018.
Today's guest is Lucas Hall. He's the founder of Landlordology, a premier education website that helps over 4 million, not 400,000, 4 million landlords and renters every year. That is awesome. He's the head of industry relations at Cozy, which provides free online rent collection and screening tools for landlords nationwide. He counsels thousands of managers every year, teaching them how to manage rentals, build wealth, and keep their tenants happy. Without further ado, Mr. Lucas, how are you doing, bro?
Hey, Gino. Hey, Josh. Thanks for having me. This is great.
So you were on the show about a year ago, and that's how I connected with you. I invited you to come out to the live event. You had an awesome presentation about technology. Give the viewers a background of what you do, how you got with Cozy Co, and how you got landed on this podcast.
Thanks. Yeah, so my quick 2-minute background is that I'm a landlord too. I've been an independent landlord for about 13 years, and I have 5 properties in 3 states and at about 20 to 22 tenants at any given time. And I take pride in that. I take pride in the fact that they're my customers and I treat them well, and I want them to succeed, and I want them to feel at home, and I want them to feel happy. And I've realized that if I treat them right, then I'm actually going to make more money. They're going to stay longer. I'm going to be able to raise the rents, and they won't complain. And I started learning this when I was young, when I was 25 or so, when I bought my first property. And then I realized, a lot of the gurus out there aren't teaching this. They're teaching, a quick buck. And I didn't want to pay $1,000 a month to, learn about a quick buck. And so I just started blogging my heart out on a website called Landlordology. And it became very popular very quickly. And the amount of traffic that Google was sending to it was really great. And it got the attention of a bunch of companies, but one in particular was called Cozy. And I had found Cozy a couple months prior and thought, oh, wow, they do software for landlords and it seems free, and I thought, wow, they seem to really get it. They seem to match up with my beliefs. And sure enough, the CEO of Cozy reached out to me. We built a relationship, and he ended up acquiring Landlordology and then hiring me to continue to grow that. And I did, and it was fantastic. And I've been a part of Cozy for over 4 years, and we now have 270,000 landlords actively using us at any given time. And then we have nearly 1 million signups of landlords and tenants. And we offer rent collection for free, no transaction fees, no monthly fees, nothing. And tenant screening for free. That's credit reports and background checks for the landlord. It's really just a streamlined kind of design first system. And it's catching on like crazy. So people all over the country are using it, and I'm proud to be part of it.
So what Lucas forgot is last year they had $1 billion in rent collections, correct? And what are you at, $1.5 billion now, right? Or $2 billion?
Yeah. So towards the end of the year, we hit we hit the marker where we're processing $1 billion in rent every year, and just last month we hit $1.5 billion. So it took us 4 years to get to $1 billion, and it took us 6 months to get to $1.5 billion.
Isn't that how life works? You got to plant the seeds, and those seeds take a little time, but then once they start multiplying, Jake calls it the snowball effect, right? That is awesome. So, how did Cozy Co come up with the idea? How did you come up with the idea of actually, or the company come up with the idea of doing everything for free? And how does the company monetize, make money themselves?
Yeah, great question. So our founder, Gino, was looking for an apartment in San Francisco, and he applied to a place, and it was just a traditional kind of paper-based application process with a landlord who just had a couple of units. And after he applied, he filled out all of his sensitive information onto this piece of paper and handed it over. And then that landlord that night went to run his background and credit report check on Gino, and was using some antiquated, old system, and ended up pushing the submit button about 3 or 4 times, and ran his credit 3 or 4 times in a matter of just a few minutes because he was impatient, didn't want to wait on the processing. So what that ended up doing was dropping Gino's credit score by like 70 points. And then and then he had to deal with it. He just had to wait it out, and it was just a bad experience. And so he thought, let's try to do something different. And he came up with this idea that let's democratize all of the tools and things that the advanced property managers have, like the big boys, right? The big apartment complexes, they have it down. They're figuring it out, and they've been figuring it out for years. So let's democratize those and make them free. And let's offer it to independent landlords, because really there was nothing really that good for independent landlords, and nothing really inexpensive. So he got the idea together, and he approached a couple of investors, and eventually ended up in front of the board at Google Ventures. And they said they loved the idea, and they loved that it could be free. And they said that's kind of what they do. They make great things free. And they gave us our initial seed money to get started. And from there, we've raised about 15 million, and have a bunch of the best investors on the planet behind us. And we're making money. So to answer your second question, we are making money through a number of means. The tenant, or everything is free for the landlord, I should say that. If you want to screen a tenant or an applicant with a background check and a credit report, those things are not free for the tenant. They pay $39.95 for the bundle, and the tenant actually gets a copy of all of that too. So they see what you see. It's fully transparent, and there's no need for an adverse action notice because they already have the credit report. So I've found personally, when I screen my own tenants with Cozy, it becomes kind of a truth serum, because they tell me they don't have any evictions, and all of a sudden they get a copy of the background check too. And before I'm able to look at that, I have an email or a voicemail from them saying, "Oh, I forgot about that one," So it forces them to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But we make money that way, and we make money through a number of other little means. Like we do charge if somebody wants to pay with a credit card. If they wanted to pay their rent with a credit card, there's a 2.75% fee, and we make a slight margin on that. So the ancillary services are not free, but all the core businesses for Cozy are free.
That's awesome. So who's the target market for Cozy?
Sure. We specifically are targeting independent landlords with less than 20 units. And the majority of our customers have less than 5 units. So it's mom and pop landlords and people who don't know how to get started and really don't have any money to get started, but they want to use a great tool. And then what we found is that the people who use Cozy and they only have 1 unit, those are the ones that are writing in and saying, thank you so much, because now that I've figured out how to make the managing aspect of this work, I feel confident to go and buy other properties. And we even have one of our writers for Landlordology. She's the landlord too. And when she started with us, she had 1 property, and now she has 5, all because she got hooked in with us and she felt confident to grow.
I like that. What you did so well last year at the presentation and live event, you spoke about other competitors. And here at Jake and Gino, we always get questions about other softwares like Appfolio, Buildium, and all that. Who do you like? Who would you recommend? Because I know your product seems like it's more for the mom and pop, but for any of the listeners out there who scale up and have 600 or 700 units, who do you like in the space? And tell me why.
That's a great question. So there is not one single tool that's going to fit everybody's needs. And so people who have 600 units have very different needs and requirements than somebody who has 5. So Cozy is perfect for anybody with less than 50 units. And then we target, 1 through 20. But if you have even 100, maybe 600 units, I think there's 2 products out there that I really like. Buildium and Appfolio, you mentioned them. And I like them over a lot of the other companies. And some of those other companies have been around for 20 or 30 years, but I like them because they started out as an online service. They didn't start as like a CD that you have to get mailed to you and then install on your local servers. Like that's old software. That is old code that's going to hurt you in the end. But anybody who's got that online presence where that is their whole business, right? It's software as a service. Then they have the potential to grow, and they're not held back by old code. So and besides that, I think Buildium and Appfolio are priced reasonably. They're not thousands and thousands of dollars per account, right? They're priced by the number of units you have. So you really only pay for what you use, which is just a great way to do it. So they have some fantastic tools. They do cater to the large property managers and have all the bells and whistles that they need. And depending on your size, I would choose Buildium for maybe anywhere from 1 to 300 units, and then Appfolio for 300 plus.
So it's all about the customer experience also. So how does the customer experience at Cozy Co separate itself from other competitors?
Yeah, great. The customer experience, I mean, we are a design first company. So our CEO is actually a professional designer by trade. So he was the head of design at Flickr. He's always led design organizations. And so when he built Cozy, I mean, we were 10 people when I joined, and 5 of those were designers. So it was pretty cool, and we were able to design a user experience that made sense. You didn't feel like you were using Windows 98, right? You felt like you were using a modern tool that answered your questions before you had them, and it walked you through the process so that you felt very comfortable with what you were doing. Because we realized, after all, at the end of the day, we were kind of a financial institution. I mean, we didn't hold any money. We never hold any money, but we are processing $1.5 billion in rent. And so people trust us with their money. And so we need to make sure that our product is simple to use for anybody at any level, and they feel comfortable with it.
I love that. So I'm a mom and pop landlord. What are some of my pain points? I'm coming in, and what do you see some of the pain points of mom and pops that you can serve with Cozy Co?
The major pain points is that they don't know how to put it all together. So they say, okay, I just really need to collect rent. And I don't know how to do that. And I've been collecting cash or checks, and it's not working for me. And they don't really understand online payments at all. I mean, they're not the ones using Venmo or Square or Zelle even. They're just people who are kind of keeping the status quo, and they've been collecting checks all their life, right? And I think those pain points it's not so much that they don't want to change. I mean, oftentimes they do. It's just that they don't know how. And so we often joke, and it shouldn't be a joke because it's real, but we often joke that our biggest competitor is not Buildium or Appfolio, it's Excel. It's people who have tracked their entire rental business in a spreadsheet, and that's what they do. So getting them over to a tool where it's like, no, listen, you don't have to use Excel anymore. Everything is actually tracked a whole lot better online, and you don't have to worry about site visits for screening or faxing things over. Like, you can ditch your fax machine. You can do all this. So just changing their mentality to having lots of different verticals to try to get something done, to having one system is really exciting, but they're not used to it. And when they figure it out, when they realize it can really be that simple, they love it and they stick around. I mean, our attrition rate is some of the lowest in the industry. We don't really ever lose customers once they start using Cozy. So
you might not be able to answer this question, but what is your average age, do you think, of landlord? Because I can see guys in the 50s and 60s going, I ain't doing this. The cheapos over here love to use Google Docs, right? We love Google Docs. So we're like, oh, we'll use Google Docs, although your service is free. What do you think the average person is? And how do you go out and market to them? How do you actually get people to come and visit Cozy Co and say, hey, I need the service?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We don't ever ask people's age in our system, but if I had to guess, I would say that we differ a little bit from the typical landscape of landlords, right? I mean, I think if I had to guess, I would say that the majority of the independently owned rental properties in the United States are owned by landlords between 40 and 60. That would be my guess. Okay. I think that our customer base is probably between 30 and 50. So maybe even 25. And I think that is the way it is because the younger landlords, the people who are just getting started, the people who embrace technology are the ones seeking out a tool, right? The 50-year-olds, the 60-year-old landlords who have been doing it the same way for 30 years aren't necessarily getting onto Google and typing in, online property management software. So that's why.
That's your fault. You've got to get them over, because the problem is, and it's Jake and Gino's responsibility, it's not being a landlord, it's being an asset manager, right? So you have to start building systems into your whole business model. And I think it's incumbent upon us to educate people why we need the service. So educate me on why I need Cozy Co right now. Before we build up the framework on how to get started, what would you say to somebody? What are the benefits of using Cozy Co as opposed to using Google Docs or any other software?
Sure. So the key things that we do at Cozy is we let you create an online listing for your property. You have online rental applications, online tenant screening, like with credit reports and background checks, and they're full and nothing's held back. And then online rent collection, online maintenance requests, and online expense tracking, and then reporting as well. So it truly is the full life cycle. But I think that the challenge is getting people to see the value if they've been doing something for a long time and they think it's good enough, right? They don't know what they're missing. So what I've learned, and I've been using it for almost 5 years now, what I've learned is that it actually makes me a better landlord, and it frees me up to do other things in life. So I've been able to travel the world and manage my properties from Thailand. And I would never be able to do that if I didn't have software like Cozy. I've been able to not have to deal with a single rent check for 4.5 years. I haven't had a single late rent payment with 20 tenants that each pay every year. Never had a single late rent payment for the last 2.5 years. And that's unbelievable, right? I mean, that's just absurd. And I'm able to do it because I have the right tools in place, and I never have to think about it. I mean, imagine like my idea of rent collection is not chasing down the rent, knocking on doors and going to the properties and then hounding them. It's I'm sitting in my pajamas on my couch on a Sunday morning, and my phone dings and says, "Congratulations, your rent is being deposited." Like, that's the type of landlord I want to be. And that's what Cozy lets me do. So when people realize that and they say, "Oh, okay, that's a big benefit for me," and then I go on and tell them, "Well, hey, it's also a benefit for your tenants, because with the right tools like Cozy, you can make it easier for them." I mean, for a lot of tenants nationwide, the only reason they still have a checkbook, the only reason, is to write their rent check every month. They don't use it at all. So they write 12 checks a year. Right. And every single part of their life is online. Every bill they ever pay is online except for rent. So you tell them, "Hey, come look at my place. I'm glad you like it. Did you know that you can also pay online, and it's free? It doesn't cost you a dime. And if you pay online, we'll report your positive payments to the credit bureaus, and it'll actually help you build credit. And that way, when you leave my property eventually, you'll end up better than you started." And that is a huge incentive for tenants. They just want to eventually buy their own house usually, or they want to get the next rental property. And if they have a better credit score, then they're better off.
I was wondering if you remember the story you told at the live event last year about tenants. I think you were screening them and they were on a mountain and they rent. Do you remember that story?
I do. Do you want me to tell it?
Yeah, you should share, because I think it's really, really powerful. And it's like, it's about the sale, right? We just talked about this offline. When you have a sale and it's got to get done, you don't want that cognitive dissonance. I think that's the right word we're using, where like, oh, is buyer's remorse? You got them lock and load. So I love that story. If you can share that with us, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I was showing a condo that I own in DC, and I had put a listing out, and I had gotten a lot of responses. And this one girl actually emailed me. She's like, "Hey, I can only really look at it tonight. I flew in from California to do some stuff with my job, and I'm here, through tomorrow morning. So can I see it tonight?" And we ended up meeting. She loved it. She said it was perfect. She wanted it. And then I said, "Okay, wait, well, now you just have to fill out an application." And she goes, "Well, do you think we can make time for my roommates to see it?" And I thought, well, shoot, I didn't even know you had roommates. You didn't mention that. But yeah, we can try, but I've got 3 other showings this weekend. So if you want it, we got to figure this out soon. And I said, you could just give them the link to the application, because it has like 25 pictures on there, and they can talk to you about it, or they can call me. And so she said, "Great, I'll work on that." And she got on an Uber and went back to her hotel. And by the time she got back to her hotel, she had completed the application, because I had in my inbox, I had a full completed rental application and credit report and background check from her. And at the same time, she sent an email to her 2 other roommates and said, "This is our next place. Trust me. Here are the pictures. You need to fill this out tonight. You need to apply tonight." And one of them happened to be hiking the side of the Matterhorn in Switzerland at that moment. So she got the email, which is nuts. And she got the email, and I guess they were taking a break during the hike, or they were what it's called, where you're elevating, and took the time and filled it out on her phone, and then submitted it. And sure enough, that night I had a full completed set of applications from that group, one of which was hiking the Matterhorn, which to me is just super impressive in the fact that she got cell phone service and was able to do it in a frozen tundra. But that's the power of technology. And I was able to get really great qualified tenants who ended up staying multiple years because I was using something other than a paper rental application.
Wow, I love that story. I remember listening to it. I'm like, I can't even get pizza delivered on time, and you get an online application across the world. So that's the power of technology. Let's start out with let's talk about the listeners. What's the easiest way to get started if you still have a paper-based system? Because a lot of people out there, a lot of listeners out there, are like, you know what? It sounds great, but not for me.
Sure. I think the easiest way to get started is to decide that you're going to do it. I think that it's a mental block. I think a lot of people get scared for whatever reason of changing the thing that they've always done, the thing that they know. So if you can get past the mental block, then we can talk, right? I think from there, a great place to start is to look at some tools that don't cost you much, or if anything, like Cozy, and see, hey, what do they offer? And figure out what are the areas in my business that I still use paper. So let's just review that for a second. Traditionally, people have paper applications, paper flyers they post all over a university or on cars, or they do advertising in a local paper. They might have a static website, but sometimes not. They sometimes use fax machines to print in or send authorizations for screening, and then leases. They've got full 15, 20-page leases that they have to make multiple copies of, and then you have to store everything in a file cabinet in your office that's locked. And then there's all kinds of notices and communication that you need to have with the tenant that sometimes you just tape to the door. And all those areas can be improved if you just think about how to fix them. And so take it step by step. Maybe first start with the beginning of the life cycle, which means maybe start with online listings. Your next vacancy or potential vacancy when someone's leaving, just maybe move that one unit over to a modern tool. Move that one unit and say, I'm gonna try to find a tenant online through online listings, and then I'm gonna actually collect an online rental application from them instead of a paper application, and then I'm gonna screen them through online credit reports instead of some system that I have to fax their application to. And just start there. Start with one single unit, and you'll get a feel for it. And it's a low risk opportunity where if it fails, if you don't like it, or if it gives you issues, you didn't lose anything really. You just go back to paper. But I truly think that once you taste what that is like, then you realize, oh man, I could put my whole business over here, and I will have a whole lot more time.
I hope you don't mind if I share our experience of our journey through the education, through the technology. When we first bought our first 25 unit deal, we didn't know Cozy Co. And I think we bought our first deal in 2013. So it's a 25 unit deal. We were doing QuickBooks because that's what I used, right? So QuickBooks, I guess, was okay. Jake would send me up the papers. I would do it with my bookkeeper. 3 months later, we bought another 36 unit property. So we're at 60 units, and it's becoming laborious. But the I'm a mentality, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And you know what? We just fumbled through it. Then we bought our third deal a year after the first one. We're up to 200 units. We decided to go to RentPost. And we should have probably gone to Appfolio. But I always tell people now, think of the end in mind. Start out with your exit in mind, right? We didn't think we were going to get that big. And even if we did, we didn't think that technology was for us. So for everybody out there, think of with the exit in mind. Think of technology. If you haven't bought a property yet, start setting yourself up right now, because I'm doing a lot of training on this. It's all about the customer experience. Everyone focuses on the sales and marketing while you've leased up your unit. But then what happens after you lease up the unit? you give the customer experience, and the customer experience goes to customer management, and then it falls apart. So you have to think about the entire journey of that customer. And I think the online tools you're talking about really facilitate and help that out tremendously. And the other thing with AppFolio or anything that's cloud-based, it's so easy to deal with other partners. When you're doing a refinance, you hit a button, boom, it goes to the bank. You want to do pictures, you want to have maintenance requests, you want to do online. I'm inundating people with a lot of stuff, but it just becomes so much easier. So when you first start out, I think Cozy is such an easy, no-brain kind of low barrier of entry to it, that I don't think anybody should even think about using QuickBooks, because that's not what QuickBooks is about. I think this is the perfect software technology to start with. I mean, do you agree or disagree with me on that?
I do. I would just caution that while you certainly should think about the end in mind, I know if you don't have enough units, sometimes AppFolio and Buildium won't even work with you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They will tell you don't use us because it's not cost effective. I mean, for example, AppFolio has a minimum of $250 a month plus a $400 setup fee. So, if I only had an eightplex, let's say, if I had that and that was where I was starting,
mm-hmm.
I really don't want to spend, $1,200 to get started, including training, and then $250 a month. Like that's a little bit like killing a fly with a cannon, even if that is where you will eventually end up. So I think as long as you stick with a cloud-based system and one that is is designed for your needs at the time, it will be fairly easy to move up and switch. I mean, but I would also say that it's wise. I mentioned starting with one unit. Well, what if you don't want to start with one unit? What if you just want to jump in? I think there's some caution there, because if you have a staff, and if you do have an apartment complex, you probably will have a leasing office and you'll have a team of people. And, imagine what it's like for those people to have to all of a sudden switch up their entire thing with every unit. Like if you just said, oh, we're moving AppFolio, and then get it done by next week. I mean, there's a ton of training involved for complex systems, and some of the people are not going to be open to changing, and they're not going to feel comfortable. It's going to make them feel like they're failing at the job if they can't get it done in time. And it's hard. And so I think if you are considering if you do have a lot of units and you want to jump to one whole system all at once, I would spend the time to get training from that company or watch a lot of demos from that company. I know AppFolio does it, Buildium does it. Cozy has twice a week demos where you just watch it for a week. It's live and you can ask questions, and just see what you're doing, see what you're buying first, and make sure that your staff is comfortable with it. Because if they have huge reservations or if they're not on board, then you're going to fail no matter what product you decide to use.
I totally agree with that. What I was trying to say is in the very beginning, if you're going to think about scaling up, you need to go cloudless. You need to start with your product, because we had that problem when we were RentPost to get to the next level. A lot of managers, there's a learning curve to it. It took a long time to download all those documents in there, download all the tenants and all the properties in there. But you know what? It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. I promise you guys, lean in, because it's going to be, and even when you start out with CozyCo, if you're on QuickBooks or you're not sure about it, listen to GDaddy, okay? I'm going to tell you this right now. It is really hard. I'm not going to tell you it's not hard. Rip off the Band-Aid, because whenever I've ripped off the Band-Aid and I've gone to the next month, it's like, wow, short-term pain, and it's not even long-term gain. It's a little bit longer term. It doesn't take you that long. Within 2 to 3 months, you're going to see the amazing amount of success you're going to have and the amount of pain that's gone away. Because it's like, it's so much easier. I mean, the amount of money that you save, the amount of time that you save. I remember sending up books and having to input everything on QuickBooks and not being able to do that. I mean, there's an amazing amount of stuff that you can do online. So I just say rip off that Band-Aid, right? Yeah,
exactly. And I would say that probably about a third of our customers who come to us for the first time, they don't need tenants. They actually have tenants. They don't need to screen anybody. They already have a full house and they don't have any vacancies coming up, but they want to modernize their system. And I think where they want to start is they said, well, okay, let's just start with rent collection, right? And I think if you're in that, if you're that place, right, where you have a full house, you don't have a lot of vacancies, if any, and you just want to try to take a baby step towards modernizing your business, start with rent collection, because that's a great way. And you can get, I would also say start with one unit too, but find one tenant who maybe is a little more tech savvy, one that's comfortable with a phone, and somebody who would be excited to pay rent online and say, would you try this with me? Would you mind starting to pay your rent online through Cozy or whoever? And it's my way to test it. And, if you want, you can give them an incentive or something, but try it out, get a taste for it that way. It's a low risk. And if it doesn't work out, go back to checks, but I think it will. And I think that, it'll make everybody a lot happier. So that's another entry point where you can get started, is start with rent checks or start with rent.
But Lucas, don't you see that's where technology, that's where the internet's going? I mean, it's just unfortunate, but that's where we're all going. And if you just look at people, I mean, like social media used to be like, okay, Facebook's really popular because that's what the kids are using, so the parents have to use Facebook. So this is the same kind of technology. You look at your spending habits, we're all going online. Credit cards are the way to go, and you want to make it facilitated as easy as possible. So how do you get people to say technology is unsafe? I mean, how do you overcome that hurdle? Because I know a lot of people in their 50s and 60s are really afraid of technology.
Right.
How do you overcome that hurdle?
Yeah. You can explain to them. I mean, for example, Cozy has spent a lot of money from the beginning to make sure that we have bank level encryption. I mean, people use online banking all the time and they're comfortable with it because they trust Wells Fargo or Bank of America to have a system in place. And we realized, we're processing $1.5 billion, and we need to make sure that's money safe. So we have a incredible amount of encryption going on, and we actually have a full fraud team. So believe it or not, there are a lot of people from other countries wanting to use systems like Folio and Buildium and Cozy and PayPal and Venmo and Zelle, use all of them for fraud. And they're sneaky. And if you don't have an experienced fraud team to combat that, for us, any software company is going to crumble under that fraud activity. So we actually have an amazing fraud team that has been able to stop almost everything from happening. I mean, I think in the last 4 years, we've only lost a few $1,000s out of 1.5 billion. So I think it's something that we take very seriously. Now, I can tell them all that. I can tell a landlord all about that. But if they're still not comfortable with technology, there's nothing really I can do, because behavior change is one of the hardest things for anybody to do. And I can just tell them that, that we process $1.5 billion and we don't have any problem with it. Mm-hmm. We don't let it get away. And if that's not good enough for them, then I'm not sure what else would be.
Nothing. That's right. Where do you see Cozy going in the next 5 years?
Great question. So Cozy's always revolutionized the industry. We have a lot of tool competitors out there that tend to copy what we do, and every time we have a new feature release, they typically come right on the heels of it with something like it. But we've always tried to think ahead, and we've always tried to think like, what is better for both parties? It's not just a landlord tool. It's something that's actually making renting simpler and easy and fun for both parties. And where I think we're going to go, where we're headed towards, is that it will truly be an end-to-end system. So we're developing some new features now that will even let you eliminate some online tools that you might be paying for right now, like document signing, and we're still going to keep it free. And where I actually see this going is that Cozy will become an ecosystem. It won't just be a tool. It'll be something where tenants live, well, not physically live, but they'll be there, and landlords will be there. And just imagine this, imagine never having to list your property ever again, right? Imagine opening up your phone if you know you have a vacancy, right? Or you're going to have a vacancy because the tenant's leaving, and you open up your phone and you say, hey, we have enough, there's enough tenants on Cozy. We're getting to that scale where you can maybe search and say, show me all the tenants in my zip code that have leases ending in the next 3 months. And then you could potentially reach out to them and say, hey, I see that you might be, if you aren't planning on renewing, why don't you come check out my place? And for the first time ever, a landlord has actually been able to pursue a tenant and not have to list their property, but find tenants who are in the system, who already have a background check and credit report listed, who already have a renter profile filled out. You can kind of interview them before you even talk to them. And I think that that ecosystem will be self-sustaining. And as a renter, if you want to find a place, you just get on Cozy. As a landlord, if you want to find a renter, you just get on Cozy. And I think that is the future. And that's what we're slowly building towards, little by little.
I love it. So Jake always says, thank God you can't live in the internet. Thank God you got to rent an apartment. So the apartments will always be there. The ecosystem is there. Where do you see as the future of property management? Where do you see that space going?
Wow, the future of property management, I think, is definitely going more virtual reality. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
I really like the apartment complexes that are embracing that and letting you do walkthroughs virtually. And so you get on their website, you see unit 406 is available, and you can literally walk through it and see exactly what you're going to see. And what I think that does for them is it not only builds trust and transparency, but it will eliminate all the tire kickers. It will eliminate the people who aren't prepared for that unit or think they're getting something else. And so by the time they actually enter the leasing office, or by the time they pick up that phone, they know they want the place. And so I think in general property management, where it's going is that before anybody talks to anybody, it's already sold, right? It's already done. Like they know what they want, and it's just a matter of signing on the dotted line. So I think that will eliminate, at least for most landlords and managers, eliminate 80% of the headache. And I think that's where I see a lot of the big industry going.
Before we get to the short answer questions, my last long answer question is, what are the technologies do you like in the market? I remember you talk about Nest thermostats. And I mean, unfortunately, in our space, the C space, we can't adopt a lot of these technologies, although we've gotten into the, B space and some of these technologies. What do you like out there right now as far as technology wise?
Wow, I'm actually building a home that's going to be completely Alexa enabled. It's actually being installed by Amazon employees. It's pretty cool. I think that is too far of a jump for most rentals, but I really like the idea that houses in general are kind of coming alive. I know that scares a lot of people, but I think that the idea that if I can control everything about my house remotely or with my voice or just easier, it just makes my life simpler. And then I feel comfortable, I'm relaxed. So I personally like that. But I think technology, other technologies, anything that brings us together. So I like anything that has a social aspect to it. And if you can create, for lack of a better term, like a social community within your physical community, you will have happier tenants. They will want to stay longer because they are more embedded into the community. I mean, there's nothing worse than having 15 units and half the people or all the people don't know each other. They don't even know their neighbor, and so they feel like an island. And there's no reason for them to stay when it's renewal time. So if they feel embedded and have relationships with their neighbors on any floor, then you could raise the rent a couple $100 if it's appropriate, and they probably will pay it because they like the place. So get people online. Don't just have social hours. Don't just have occasional breakfasts for everybody in the leasing office, but actually have an online community for them. Have a place for them to go, and maybe that's through the property management software. Maybe that's starting a Facebook group that's closed, and you just add the new tenant that joins and introduce them online and go to where they are. So I think using whatever community software you prefer to get your tenants involved, I think that will just make a happier place.
I like that.
Wow. All right, Lucas, let's take a dive into you here. So what's your best habit for success for the listeners?
I think, well, I have a lot actually. I think one of my favorite ones that is quite so simple, but quite difficult to get into is that whenever your tenants email you or send a request or contact you in any sort, make sure that you respond within an hour. Now, it's okay to have business hours. It's okay to close up shop at 5 or whatever. But if it's within normal business hours, just make sure you respond within an hour, if not immediately. And what I mean by that is you don't have to have a solution at all. Like they might be saying, "Hey, listen, there's a really funny smell coming out of the furnace." You have no idea what that is. But you should tell them, "I got your message. Thanks so much. I'll work on it." And that's all you do, because if people usually get frustrated when they feel like they're not being listened to. And if you can calm that down and just say, "I hear you, you will be amazed at how satisfied they will be with it. They won't remember that it took you a week and a half to figure out what the furnace was necessarily, but they will remember that you responded immediately. So I actually have I let my tenants text me. I know that's sometimes not appropriate, but I think that's what they want to do. And I let them do it. And I found that just like I've never unclogged a toilet at midnight, I find that my tenants, because I choose good tenants, they respect me and they never text me at 10 o'clock at night. They're always texting me at normal time. So I believe that I believe that they're good people and they will respect me. And as a result, they do.
I like that. That's a good answer. What about a lesson you had to learn the hard way, or a big mistake you made in business that we can save the listeners here?
I didn't run the numbers on my first property. That's kind of a big one, right? My first property is a 6-bedroom row house on Capitol Hill in DC. And while it is super cool and like it's a big property and it has 6 roommates in it, I'm unable to actually market it as a single family home. So I'm unable to try to attract or lease to a family that wants to rent there, because honestly, a family may only want to pay upwards of about $3,000, but my mortgage is $4,000, so I need to figure out how to make the numbers work with the tenants. And so as a result, I have to rent that property to 5 or 6 roommates every single time. And I market it like that. And I never have families want to pay what I need them to pay, so they never apply. And I didn't run the numbers. And for those who know me, I actually bought that first property to impress a girl, because I liked her and she was in real estate. And I thought, well, I'll just buy a house in her neighborhood and then she'll like me. And, it did work out. We did get married and now we have a daughter, but that house was not maybe the best financial purchase. I've been able to make it work, but I always know what you're getting into before you buy it.
Wow. Yeah, I like that. Okay. What projects do you have on the horizon right now? What are you excited about?
Oh gosh. I've got so much actually. I am excited corporately for Cozy. I mean, we're doing some really cool things that I think are just going to blow away our customers. And we're also we're starting to partner in negotiations with another really big platform, and we're trying to figure out what that might look like in terms of a partnership. So I'm excited there. And personally, I just moved to Denver. I'm pretty excited about being in a new market, and I am looking forward to kind of reinvesting and getting back into single family purchases and even multifamily purchases. So I'm actually starting to look at buying 100-unit complexes, and I'll always be a landlord at heart, but I see a lot of potential profit, way more profit in 100-unit complexes than I do in having, 10 single family homes with a lot less work. So I'm exploring that, and actually a lot of what I'm learning is through Jake and Gino's course. So I've been taking that online, and I think it's really great. So thanks to you for providing a platform for me to learn about that.
Thank you. I've got a lot of takeaways from the podcast, from the show right now. I'm going to hit Josh up and let me see if it resonates with him. The first thing is Cozy Co was actually invented from an entrepreneur who saw a problem in the market and wanted to solve that problem. I think that's just the basic definition of an entrepreneur, other than a guy who makes enough money to pay the bills. It's actually an entrepreneur who sees a problem, goes out in the marketplace and tries to actually solve that problem. So that's awesome. That's what we try to do at Jake and Gino. That's what I know you were doing at Landlordology with the blogging. It's just somebody sees something wrong. There's an inequity in there, and it's just like, dude, let me fix it. The second thing, and I think the most important thing, is that landlording should be looked at as a business, and we don't look at it as a business. That's the problem. There's no customer experience, and you guys have it even harder because you have 2 customer experiences. You have the tenant's customer experience and you have the landlord's customer. It's bad enough to have one. You have 2, which makes it even more challenging, and you've done a fantastic job doing it. So I think everyone who's a landlord out there needs to focus on the customer experience, needs to focus on touch points, needs to focus on to make it as easy as possible. The easier it is to hit a button and to go to an online application or to pay an invoice, it's going to make your life a lot easier. Your tenants are going to like it. Hence, they're going to stay longer. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you money, and that's what we call systematizing or building up the business. So I think everybody needs to focus on that when they start landlording. Don't only think about buying a single family home or duplex and house hacking and whatever, what is it, BRRR, what the heck that means, it just kills me, that term. Think about the long-term ramifications of actually setting up a business and trying to systematize that and say, how am I going to make it a lot easier to get tenants? And tenants are ultimately your clients, right? Your clients, you're trying to serve them. So this type of software, this type of online platform is what they're looking for, is what you should be looking for. So.
Wow. Great.
I hope I've wrapped that up in a nice, tiny little bow. I'm looking forward to having you out there again in October. Like I said, you had a great presentation last year. You're going to have another great one this year. Just spreading the wealth, talking about the property manager software. I love where your company is going. Great growth from $1 billion to 1.5. Hopefully by the end of the year, you'll hit $2 billion. And I just want to thank you for coming on. It was an awesome show today. Thanks.
Thank you, Gino. Thank you, Josh.
Anything else, Mr. Joshi?
I think that's it. Just, we want to see you in Nashville.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's always fun.
Thanks. Take care, guys.
Bye.